Alright, this is a place here where you can catch a lot of stripers. They're just not big here. This is what I'm using. It's made by Storm, and they really seem to love it. Nothing big here, but it's still a fun place to fish because there's usually a lot of them here. Usually as soon as it hits the water. So here it goes. I need to move up actually where I get out of the light. I'm convinced them and the bait fish can see you out here if you're under the light. If you can get off in a dark spot where you're not noticed, you seem to do a lot better. Normally, if I don't see them breaking on top of the water, I don't throw in, just because of the fact it keeps spooking off all the bait fish. Once you see them start breaking on top, you know the bait fish are there. That's the time to throw in. So it's pretty calm right now. Nothing's actually one way out there. There they go. They're starting to get active now. There's one. Feels like the average size of them here. Around 12 to 14 inches is the average size of them here. Better to let them fight a little bit and wear themselves down, because they will keep fighting after you lift them out. That's what they look like. There he is again. See, I could horse him in, but I'm better off to just let him fight a little bit. Take some of the wind out of him. Pound for pound, they're one of the strongest fish to fight in. Looks like he swallowed it pretty good. This is going to require a little help from the needle nose. I like a pair like this because they can really get down into where you need them. Feels like it's breeze is starting to pick up. If the water gets too choppy on top, you can forget it. Seems to run the little bait fish off. the ones that they're feeding on come up under the lights to feed on plankton in the water. If it's windy, then they can't really see the plankton, so they don't come around. Here's some big gar right here. Both of them are chasing it. They didn't want it too bad. As I was saying, you can see the water starting to get a little chop on it now, and that can put an end to it real quick. Because if the bait fish aren't there, then the white bass and the hybrids won't be there. The only two things I see that hurts fishing like this at night is if it gets windy and gets a little chop on the water, or when the moon comes up and shines on the water. I really don't know what the moon has to do with it, other than maybe it spreads the bait fish out because they can see plankton from anywhere they go then. But I know in the past fish can be biting good, and as soon as the moon comes over the hill, they're done. If it's cloudy, it can be a full moon and they'll still hit. You can really see them breaking out there in the water right now. I prefer to use baits like this with one hook, just because of the fact it's a lot easier to get them unhooked and released. Rapala shad wraps are excellent. I prefer a 6 or 7 size, but you have 2 sets of treble hooks. And usually by the time you got the fish in, you've got at least 2 of the hooks on each treble buried in the fish. So you waste more time digging hooks out and releasing them. As you can see, I've drifted back out into the light, which tends to spook everything. I always tell people if I bring them with me, try to stay out of the light and try to wear something that the fish can't see you if they're looking out of the water. I'm wearing camo right now, but black is the best if you can dress in all black. You got to imagine what the fish see as they look out of the water. If you're dressed in all black, you should blend in with the night sky. Kind of a noisy place here. Trains loading, if you haven't noticed. I missed that one. Got him that time. As you can see, when they're active, you can catch one just about every cast. But again, they look like the same fish every time you bring them in. I've got several different places I go to for these, and the size always varies. Got a spot way up the river that You can get into some really nice ones. If you go to any of the dams along the river, then you can get into the huge ones. It's just that they don't let you get in around the dams with a boat to fish. If you want to fish from the shore, shoulder to shoulder with people, you can get into some real big monsters. It's not unusual when you cast in around these cells like this. If you cast in tight to them, you can catch a nice smallmouth bass a lot of times. During the summer months, anyhow. They don't usually run out there like the stripers and white bass do out in the light. They usually stay tight to the cells on the dark edge of them, where they can watch out in the light. If you like the bluegill fish, bluegill often school out in the light, but that's usually a sign there's no big stripers there, because if the big stripers are there, you won't see the bluegill. Well, I have a feeling the wind's going to put a hurting on fishing here pretty quick. I do still feel them hitting, but if it stays like this, they'll soon quit. I'm gonna make another pass or two at them, and then I think I'm going to call it quits. I could move on down and try to find a place where the wind's not hitting that yet and try it. Sometimes you got to change up your speed to figure out what works the best, but keeping it close to the top of the water, but just under the water. Whatever speed you have to run to do that seems to work best. If you're making the ripples on the water, it don't seem to work as good if you're letting it sink too far. Usually if you're letting it sink too far and you're still catching them, it means the bait fish are spooked away and they're down waiting on them to come back. That's what they actually do when they break on the water for a short period. They scare all the bait fish off into the darker sides and down deeper. So in turn they'll drop down out of sight to allow the bait fish to move back up and start feeding, and then they'll come up and blow up on them again. Yeah, I think I might take a ride down and check a few spots. If it's not active there, then I think I'm going to head for the boat ramp. Alright, I want to take a minute and show you what I was throwing tonight. This is actually, right here's the one I was throwing. They're made by Storm Lure, wild out curly tail minnows. This is what they look like new. As you can see, after you use them a little bit, they get more of a white color, and you can tell how the fish has tore a lot of the paint off the back. But they work really well. This is another one that I use a lot of times. It's a Rapala Shad Rap. I prefer a size 6 or 7, but you can't always find those. And these are the two best colors for me. I do use chartreuse and white sometimes, but I had found with them that on some nights you're not getting good bites. As soon as you switch to either one of these colors, you're doing good. These have worked good for me in the past. They're a good casting spoon. And the rooster tails, yellow, white, and chartreuse seem to be the best colors. Chartreuse and white always work the best for me. This one's pretty well tore up, and I don't use the rooster tails as much anymore, because if you need to slow down your retrieve, you can't really do it with a rooster tail and keep the blades turning. As you can see, this one's been modified a lot to try to make it turn slower. Same way with these, you can't really slow these down much, or they sink down and get out of the range of where you're wanting, unless you're wanting to fish the fish a little bit deeper, because sometimes after they run the bait fish off, they'll drop down to about 10 or 15 feet, and they'll circle around for a while watching the surface, and then they'll come back up and blow up on them when they hit the surface again. But you can fish for them when you see them on your fish finder down at that depth with something like this. On the surface is the best. That's where I catch most of them. And the only reason that I prefer this, I catch just as many on this as I do any of the others. The only difference is you got one hook, unhook it, and you're done, and back to fishing. Most of the time with these, when you bring the fish in, they'll hit most of the time on the front one, so you'll have two of these dug into their mouth. If they've closed their mouth, you could have all three caught in their mouth, and then this one will be caught on the side of the head somewhere. So you've got all these hooks to dig out before you can cast again. So that's the only reason I prefer this. They catch pretty much the same amount. I just got this, I haven't had a chance to try it yet, but being that it's in a shad pattern, I think it's going to do well, especially when the bigger ones are there. The fishing, when I first discovered fishing at night for white bass and hybrids and stuff, it was about 15 years ago, and back then the fish were a lot bigger. It was nothing to drive by one of the lights out there at night and see. It would look like people throwing baseballs in the water everywhere. The explosions would be so big. You pull in there and cast in, and it would be trophy-sized white bass or monster hybrids every time you cast it in. You hardly ever found any little ones. And just over the years, it seems like that's gone away, and there's more of the medium and small size now. But don't know what changed on that, why they don't hit at night the same, the big ones. But hope it comes back around, because I think this would work great on them. I know 15 years ago, almost every night that I went out, I could catch a white bass up close to 20 inches or better, and at the time you only needed to beat 16 inches to get a highest citation award. So I had no trouble getting a citation award every year, because usually the first night I went and tried, I would get one. And the hybrids were huge. I got a lot of those too. So anyhow, I wanted to take a few minutes to show you what works for me, and hope it's informational to you. And if you're interested in it, you might want to give these a try. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the like button. And if you're not a subscriber and you're interested in seeing more of the videos I'm going to put up, then please subscribe now. And until next time, tight lines and bent rods to everyone.